Hello, Terry. How you doing?
I'm good, Jeff. How you doing?
Good, good. Do you hear me loud and clear?
Yeah, I'm got you good.
Okay, good, good. Give me a few moments. Let me check all my channels. Make sure everything's running correctly. All right. All right. All right. Here we go. 10 seconds. Here we go. Hey, what's up, Saucy Nation? It's your boy Jeff, and if you don't know right now, you're now tuned into the hottest podcast in the world. This is Saucy Conversations. This is season 4. This is episode 15, and we have a special guest in the house. But before we get to our special guest, we want to send a special shout out to our sponsors, which is Click A Vodka. Make sure you go support Click A Vodka. The link in description below. And also, shout out to our other sponsor, which is Holistic Remedies. They got body butters, CBD oils, and everything. So make sure you go support Holistic Remedies, and also don't forget to use that promo code HR Meets Saucy, and you get 10% off. That's HR Meets Saucy. You get 10% off at checkout. Shout out to my co-host going to be today. Shout out to Daddy. Shout out to Mac. Shout out to Bernice. Shout out to the whole Saucy Nation family. We appreciate you for joining today. If you're watching a live stream, also we are live on our YouTube channel, Twitch channel, and on Saucy Nation TV Facebook channel. Okay, so as you know, Saucy Nation TV, we dropping our own 24/7 streaming network. Anybody who like to be a part of it, whether you're a podcaster, where you make TV shows, movies, if you're into music, like your music video played on our platform, just hit me up at Saucy Nation TV at gmail.com, and I will send you all the information on the network. Okay. So today's guest, this man has a extraordinary resume. He's an ex SWAT team negotiator. He used to play Division 1 basketball. He's a life coach, and also he has a lot of experience and information that we are looking forward and what we do on the channel. And I would like to welcome you to Saucy Nation, Terry.
Hey, Jeff. Thanks for having me. I'm looking forward to talking with you.
Terry, thank you for joining the show today. I know we got a lot to get into, a lot to pack in this hour. First of all, how you doing today?
I'm great. How about yourself?
I'm doing great. I can't complain. What state do you live in?
Colorado.
Colorado. Okay, okay. I have a couple of friends that's from Colorado. I used to a couple of coworkers who's from out there, from Denver.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's where
and
we
they
live.
know.
Beautiful state.
Okay, okay. Yeah, they always tell me all the time, hey, you gotta come visit. You gotta come visit. I like. I know. I gotta make it happen to make it out there.
You should.
Definitely, definitely. All right. So Terry, let's just start from the beginning. Um, tell us about your humble beginnings. Tell us about where did you grow up? Do you have any siblings? How was growing up in Denver, Colorado, and also not growing up in Denver, Colorado, but tell us about your upbringing and your parents and your household during that time.
Sure. So I was actually very lucky. I grew up on the south side of Chicago. I am the oldest of 3 boys. You can't tell this from looking at me, but I'm 6'8" tall, and played college basketball, as you mentioned, at the Citadel in Charleston, South Carolina. I've got another brother who's 6'7", who was a pitcher for the University of Notre Dame's baseball team, another brother who's 6'6", who was drafted by the Cleveland Cavaliers in the National Basketball Association, and then my dad was 6'5". So I sort of joke that if you sat behind our family in church growing up, there wasn't a prayer's chance you were going to see anything that was going on at all. And we had great parents. I mean, our parents did what I call the sort of divide and conquer parenting. It'd be like, okay, Terry's got a game over here, dad will go to that. Larry's got a practice over here, mom will go to that. And so we were always running in a million different directions, with sports, with athletics. Fortunately, I was the first person in my family to actually graduate from college. And then when I did, I moved home to find a job. And, this was, I'm really going to date myself now, but this was long before the internet was available, to help with that. Unfortunately, I did find that first job. I was a marketing person in the corporate headquarters of Wendy's International, the hamburger chain. Unfortunately,
Wow.
I lived with my parents for the next 3.5 years as I helped my mom care for my father and my grandmother, who were both dying of different forms of cancer. You touched a little bit on my professional career, and I guess I just to round it out, my wife and I have been married for 28 years. We have one child, a daughter, who's a graduate of the United States Air Force Academy and is an officer in the new branch of the military, the Space Force.
Wow. That's amazing. Yeah. So, my next question to you is, when did you actually fall in love with basketball?
I got lucky. I started playing when I was about 9, and I just happened to be on the basketball team with the son of the assistant coach of Ohio State. At the time, we were living in Columbus, Ohio, and it's like, well, okay, kids are old enough. Let's start putting him into organized athletics. And so I got to be on the same team with the assistant coach's son. And I'll never forget this. They were recruiting a player. The assistant coach was named Bob Burkholder, and he was Fred Taylor's assistant. Fred Taylor was the head coach at Ohio State.
Right.
And I'm, we're playing in this little cracker box gym that doubled as a lunchroom and, an auditorium and all that. I mean, tile floor. I mean, it was just a gym, and I ended up walking in behind Mr. Burkholder, and the tallest man I had ever seen in my life. It was a guy by the name of Luke Whitty, who was 7'2", and he played for Ohio State for 4 years. This is way back in, probably the late 1960s, early 1970s, and that.
Right.
So,
Right.
yeah. So it was, I enjoyed it. I was tall, I was skinny. My dad was helping me develop my game, but my brother and I talk all the time. If we knew back then what we know now about training and conditioning and making them, all the different things, the different techniques, the different machines that are available, my gosh, I mean, we would have been so much
Yeah.
better ball players than we were, and we were pretty good back then.
Right. Right. I tell my sons all the time, if I would have known what I knew now, I would have been a multi-millionaire. Right. Um. My next question to you. Who was your favorite basketball player coming up?
I guess growing up, I was a big New York Knicks fan. I loved Willis Reed and Clyde
Okay.
Frazier and Earl Monroe, Dave DeBusschere, Bill Bradley, all those guys. That was a time when literally you could write the organization. You could write the Knicks, or my brother was a big Boston Celtics fan. And you could write, and they'd send you an 8x10 black and white, photo of your favorite players and stuff like that. And so I was a huge Knicks fan growing up. Loved the Celtics as well. And then when we moved back to Chicago, I think the Bulls kind of were my team. Especially, I was lucky in college. I played against Michael Jordan.
Oh wow.
Yeah, I was there. There was a tournament that they had. It was called the North-South Doubleheader, and they played it in the
Mm.
Charlotte Coliseum. and they took 2 teams from North Carolina, which were North Carolina and North Carolina State, and 2 teams from South Carolina, which were my team, the Citadel, and Furman University. And we played a round robin, Friday, Saturday night. And so Friday night, I got to play against Jordan and, Worthy and Perkins and all those guys who that year, this was 1982, won the national championship. It was Jordan's freshman year. And then the next night, got to play against Jim Valvano and his North Carolina State team, who the following year, 1983, they won the national championship. So in the course of one weekend, I got to play against 2 national championship teams.
Well, that's amazing. Did y'all win that game against Michael Jordan?
No. I think you knew the answer to that before you asked.
I just had to ask. Oh man! Shout out to Michael Jordan, GOAT. My next question: where did you go to college to?
So I went to college at the Citadel in Charleston, South Carolina. I had 3 knee surgeries in high school, so I had some, some schools kind of backed off. But this was Coach K at Duke, his final year coaching the team, and I was lucky enough to be recruited by him when he was at West Point, when he was at Army. And I remember, he came to our house and sat on our couch and said, "Hey, come play at Army." And I just was, with my knee surgeries and that, I'm like, I don't think that was a good fit. And that, so I ended up saying no. So I'm sure you're probably going to stop the interview right now because I'm a total idiot. But I mean, even back then, you just knew the guy was a classy guy, and so I mean, again, this is Chicago. He was from Chicago, so it was great to watch his career progress. And I was just lucky. I mean, you grow up in a big city like Chicago or New York or LA, or you're going to play against good competition. Isaiah Thomas was in our conference. We used to play. Him went on to Indiana and won a national championship. Went on to the Pistons and won a couple of NBA championships in that. So I just got to play against some great competition, and it was just fun to be part of that. And it's so much different than it is now because our daughter got my height. She's 6'2" and actually went to the Air Force Academy on a basketball, to play basketball. She was recruited to do that. So it's just so much different recruiting now than it was, 40 years ago when I was being recruited.
Wow. That's amazing, man. My next question to you is, what did you major in college?
I was a business administration major. I didn't know, I was, I mean, I was a kid, I was a 17-year-old kid. What do you want to, what do you want to be when you grow up? I don't know. I mean, like so many young people, you don't know. And so my dad was in business and he was like, well, major in business. Okay. I mean, so there were certain majors, playing, even though the Citadel was a small Division I school, but playing Division I basketball and keeping your grades up. And then the Citadel was also a military school, kind of like, West Point and things like that. So you had that part of it to deal with as well. So you really had to get good at budgeting your time, managing your time. Even when my daughter was playing for the Air Force Academy, they would have, when they were on road trips, they would, one, take tutors with them to help the athletes, stay current in their classes. And 2, they would dedicate a couple hours every day that this is study time. We're going to have a place in the hotel where we can go and study. So I was a business administration major just because I didn't really know what else to major
in. Right. Like you young, like who knows? You just wanted to follow your dreams, play basketball. Then, once that didn't come true for you, then you had to, go with a plan B, and you had to think of something quick off the top of the head to go with. My next question to you is: how did you end up working in the marketing team for corporate marketing team for Wendy's?
I just applied. Again, this was 1982. The economy in the United States was not great. I graduated in May. I didn't get a full-time job until October. And Wendy's, our family was back. I mean, we really kind of went back and forth between living in Chicago and living in Columbus, Ohio. And so Wendy's corporate headquarters is located in Dublin, Ohio, just outside of Columbus. And they had an opening for a field marketing trainee. And, I put in a resume for it and, went through the interview process and was fortunate enough to get hired by them. And it was a great experience because I was there really kind of in the heyday of fast food. We were experimenting with, putting in breakfast, putting in possibly hot dogs in the restaurants, just doing all kinds of different things. So it was fun, and our commercials were winning awards and things like that. So it was a great time to be there.
Okay. What are some positive things that you took away from working for Wendy's, and what is a couple of things that you want to forget about working for Wendy's?
Yeah, I mean, so I guess I'll kind of go with the other side. My passion, my purpose, my why, whatever you want to call it in life, I always felt was to be in law enforcement. My grandfather, my paternal grandfather, my dad's father, was a Chicago police officer from 1924 to 1954. And
Wow.
he was in Chicago during Prohibition when alcohol was outlawed in the United
Al
States.
Capone.
Yeah, during
Yeah.
Al Capone and those guys shooting up the town and things like that. And my grandfather was actually shot in the line of duty with his own gun, taking a murder suspect back to the lockup. It wasn't a serious injury; he was shot in the ankle. But my
Right.
dad always remembered the stories my grandmother told of the knock on the door of, Mrs. Tucker, grab your son, come with us. Your husband's been shot. I mean, and let's face it, trauma medicine in 1935 was a whole lot different than trauma medicine is today. So when I
Right.
expressed an interest in going into law enforcement, my dad was, oh, absolutely not. You're going to go to college and you're going to major in business and you're going to get out, get a great job, get married, have 2.4. My dad had my whole life planned out, but it was the life
Right.
that my dad wanted me to
That
live.
one.
Yeah, not the one I
Absolutely.
felt I was supposed to live. And so I had a choice. I could say, my dad was sick. He was dying of cancer when I graduated from college. I could say, sorry, Dad, I know you're dying, but I'm going to go blaze my own trail. Or out of love and respect for him, what I did is I went into business. I did what he wanted me to do. And I sort of joke that I did what every good son did. I waited till my father passed away and then I followed my dreams.
Right. Absolutely. You have to always follow your dreams on that one. My next question to you: how did you end up working for the hospital in Riverside Methodist
Yeah.
in Columbus?
Riverside Methodist was a huge hospital. It was like 5,000 employees, 1,100 beds. And when I left Wendy's, I was a new product marketing supervisor. So I was involved in a lot of the new products and how to take a product from the conception, from an idea to putting it into the stores and things like that. And so the hospital developed or had a position open for new program development manager. And so it was the right time. I was at Wendy's for about 3.5 years, and it just was the right time. I mean, my grandmother and my father were in and out of Riverside Hospital with their cancer battles, and it was a great place to work with great people. And I learned a lot. I learned a lot about medicine, but I learned a lot about just working with different people because as a program manager, you're like, okay, so you're dealing with pulmonary, respiratory or something like that. I'm like, I don't know anything about this, but so you really had to learn a lot of different things to be successful at your job. So it was a great experience.
Wow. Wow. So so tell us, how did you um so after your daughter was born, you end up moving to Cincinnati, and
Yeah,
you became a police officer in Cincinnati. So you wind up ending going to law enforcement as well.
I did actually. That started. So when my wife and I got married, we moved to Santa Barbara, California, for her job, and that's where our daughter was born. And it's so funny because I saw an advertisement for Santa Barbara City College that came in the mail, and I usually threw those out. But for some reason that day, I was paging through it, and there was a class that if you took the class and successfully completed it, that you could apply to be a reserve police officer with any agency within the state of California. So
Mm.
again, my wife had married me when I was a suit and tie, 8 to 5, Monday through Friday kind of guy. And one night at dinner, it's like, hey, hon, what do you think about this? This entire different lifestyle. And she was very supportive. So I took the class and I was hired by Santa Barbara PD. And so I would work all week at my regular job. And then on Fridays, I would come home, put on my uniform, go to roll call, and work all night, and then come home at 7 o'clock in the morning exhausted. But my wife said you used to come home with this big grin on your face. So that's how, I got into it. And then when our daughter was born, we're from the Midwest. And so we didn't really have any help out in California. So we moved back to the Midwest to Cincinnati. And that's when I said, you know what, I want to do this full time. And so I went through the process, taking the tests, the physical fitness tests, the psychological tests, the interviews and everything like that. And was one of 50 in a class that about 3,500 people took the test initially to get one of those 50 spots.
Wow. Oh, that's a lot of people.
It is. Yeah, I mean, they rented out the convention center to do it. I mean,
oh my God.
Yeah, it was like people everywhere.
So how did you feel when you first found out that you got the job?
I was excited. I mean, I was old. I mean, I was 37 years old, which, to be a rookie police officer is pretty old. And but I was excited. I mean, I couldn't wait to get up in the morning and go to work and see how I could make a difference and see how I could help people and things like that. So, from that aspect, it was good. I'll tell you, I took a whole lot more Tylenol in the police academy than my younger counterparts did, because it was very taxing, but it was a great experience. I loved it. I wish I was still doing it, but life has a way of sometimes throwing you a curve from time to time. But met a lot of great people and did a lot of fun stuff when I was there.
So you was a SWAT negotiator. Tell the audience a little bit about that job and what are some skill access that you really had to use of being a negotiator for SWAT?
Yeah, so a negotiator, a SWAT team is kind of the, when you need the sort of big guns, so to speak, you call in the SWAT team, and the SWAT team is divided up into two groups: a tactical team, which are the men and women with the guns and all the different gadgets, and then there's a negotiating team that is trying to talk to the person who may be barricaded or who may have taken hostages or anything like that. And so that's our job, and we train monthly as a group. We work with a psychologist. We do all kinds of interesting things. But if you think about what a policeman does or a police officer does, 99% of what we do is face to face with another human being. So it's whether we're pulling you over to give you a ticket for speeding or, answering a radio run for a fight or a domestic or knocking on your door to tell you to call the hospital because grandma died. I mean, it's always face to face. But as negotiators, that wasn't the case. I mean, we were many times, blocks away talking on the phone or, best case scenario, we're talking, through a locked door or something like that on the other side of the door. So you don't see what's going on. You can't see, if somebody, on the street you're talking to, they're starting to look around, maybe they're going to run on you, and maybe they're balling up their fists and they want to, that might mean they want to fight you. And so you can see that and you can do something about it. But as negotiators, we didn't have that ability. So you had to get good at figuring out what was going on based on what people were saying, what they weren't saying, and how they were saying it. And a lot of times you had to get good at, you had to be comfortable with silence. So what we would do, I guess the way I describe it is this. So we've all been on a teeter-totter or a seesaw, at the park when we were little kids growing up. And when we started negotiating, the persons, who we're negotiating with, their emotional side is way up in the air and their rational side is down on the ground. And over time, and all we do is ask them open-ended questions, not yes or no questions, but something that they have to talk about. And we get them to burn off a lot of that emotional energy so that teeter-totter comes to equilibrium. And then hopefully, as we ask more questions, their rational side ends up being up in the air and their emotional side is down on the ground, because we all make better decisions when we use our rational brain as opposed to our emotional brain. And so we would just ask people stuff, and sometimes, you talk and then they would stop talking. And you had to resist, and this is hard for human beings in general. You had to resist the wanting to fill that dead space, fill that silence. So you would just sit there. And then over time, that person would get uncomfortable and they'd start talking again. And that's what you were looking to do, burn off a lot of that energy. And like I said, I never lost a hostage, but there were several times where I'd say 90% of the time we got the person who was either barricaded or taken hostages out safely. But about 10% of the time, that person decided to take their own life. And while that was certainly tragic, I didn't lose any sleep over it. And I hope you don't think I'm callous for that. But I knew I did the best I could to try to get this person out safely. But it was their choice on whether or not that was going to happen.
Absolutely, yes. That choice. You can't really beat yourself up that much. You did it to your best your ability, and sometimes you have good endings, and sometimes you have bad endings. That's just the story of life, man. So
Yeah.
kudos to you. I gotta give you a round of applause for that. Just seeing that stuff, man. Actually, people, you know, taking their life and everything. Further down the line, did you? I know you say you haven't lost sleep over it, but was it something that like the images, does it play over and over in your head, and does that lead to your mental health being a little distracted, a little bit? Just think about those things.
I mean, you do think about, there are always certain people that kind of, get either under your skin or into your heart, in some way. And you think about them. I mean, law enforcement, you see, I mean, not just law enforcement, firefighters, EMS, and any kind of first responders, they see things that the general public doesn't see and shouldn't see. I mean, you see a lot of helplessness and hopelessness. And while you don't get into law enforcement, you don't get into being a first responder for the money. You do it because you want to make a difference. You want to help people in your community. And so you see some things that certainly stay with you. I'll never forget. There was a Friday night. My partner and I were off on Saturday and Sunday, and we had gone to a radio run at this apartment complex with this single mom with two small children. And over the weekend, that single mom drowned her two kids in the bathtub. And that I remember hearing that, and thinking, oh my God, 48 hours earlier, I was standing there watching those children run around in that apartment, and now they're dead, and they were killed by their mother, the person who you would think would love them regardless. And she just had some mental issues and broke. And I think about that a lot. I think about the kids that burned in a fire that I had to transport to the morgue in the back of a vehicle, and that. So you think about that kind of stuff. Yeah, I mean, you're human. I mean, we're not Superman. But so I guess when I say that is because a lot of cops turn to drugs, alcohol, bad behavior because of that. And for me, there was always, hey, shift's over, let's go out for a drink. And I was always like, no, I like you guys, but you know what? I want to go home. My family was my sanctuary. My family, was something that I just wanted to be with them because they kind of grounded me and helped me to get through those times that were a little difficult.
Right? Did you at any time did you have to see a therapist?
I never
No.
did. I mean, we
No.
had a psychologist that was available to us. I mean, if you shot somebody, you were required to see the psychologist. But no, I never did. I mean, my family really grounded me in keeping my sanity and keeping my mental health in a good state.
Right, right. That's good. So you, how many years you was in the force?
10 years.
10 years, and you wind up leaving the force and starting your own security consulting business. Tell us about that. How did that come about?
Yeah, I mean, my wife has always been the primary breadwinner in the family. And so she lost her job in Cincinnati and was not able to find another one. So we ended up, she found one in Houston, Texas. So we moved. And, I loved what I did as a police officer. I felt it was my purpose or my passion, but it wasn't who I was. And, unfortunately, I saw not a lot, but enough police officers who, been on the job, I don't know, 30, 35, 40 years and couldn't retire, couldn't let go because their whole identity was tied up in that gun and that badge and the job that they had. And
Right.
Mine wasn't. I mean, I knew, I had an undergraduate degree, I had a master's degree, I'd been to law school. And so it was like, I can do other things, And so our daughter went to a private school. And so I approached the school and I said, hey, how about if I do a security assessment for you? And, tell me what you think. I'll do it for free and that. And so they liked it and they told other schools. And so I ended up working with schools around the United States to do assessments of their physical campus. How can you be safer? And then also training their staff. And in a lot of cases, I wrote their policies and procedures about safety issues and things like that. So, based on my background, my education, my SWAT training and things like that, I was able to have a pretty fun business that that I enjoyed. And it was also a time where I was sort of coaching. It wasn't sort of. I was coaching high school basketball, so I could sort of ramp up the business in the off season and then kind of ramp it back during the season and spend more time on the coaching. So it worked in a lot of different ways.
Wow, that's amazing. That's amazing because it's not really easy making a transition like that. But top hat to you. And you wind up going back to your basketball roots, but not playing. You wind up coaching women's basketball. Tell us about that.
Yeah, that was hard for me. If you look back on my life, I grew up with two brothers, so I don't have any sisters. So, and then I went to high school in Chicago, and it was Catholic high school. So the way Catholic high schools in Chicago are, they're all girls and all boys. And so I was in an all boys Catholic high school. And then when I went to the Citadel, for college, that was at the time an all boys, an all male military college. It's now co-ed. But so, I had no interactions with women in terms of coaching and that. And I'll give you an example. So girls play sports, at least from what I've seen, for different reasons than boys do. Now, girls certainly want to win; they want to compete, but it's a lot more about the camaraderie, about the relationships that they form with their teammates and things like that. And I remember one time we were right in the middle of a game, and I turned on the bench and I pointed to somebody. I said, "Could go in for so and so," and she nods her head, and I turn back and I'm watching the game on the floor, and out of the corner of my eye, I see the scores table, and there's nobody sitting there waiting to go in. So I turn back around and I point to her, and I'm like, go in for so and so. And now she's shaking me off like a big league pitcher, I don't like that sign, I'm not doing that. So she's shaking me off, and I'm like, what do you mean no? I've never had anybody, say no, I don't want to go in the game. And the game was always the culmination of all the hard work and practice. It's like,
Right.
as a player, I was disappointed if I didn't get in the game. It's like,
Right.
what do you mean I'm not playing? So, I finally bring her over to me, and I'm like, what's the problem? She's like, I don't want to go in the game. I'm like, well, there are no uniform wearers on this team. I mean, you can't just put a uniform on and sit in the bench. You have to participate. I said, I understand that. You come to practice every day. You work hard. You make yourself better. You make your teammates better. Why don't you want to play in the game? Because my friends are in the stands, and if I make a mistake, they're going to laugh at me. Like, what? As a coach, I was like, I don't understand that. I'm like,
Right.
What about your teammates? What about the other girls on the team who are counting on you? I mean, don't you have a responsibility to them as well? And then the tears start, and I'm like, oh my God, I'm having a counseling session right in the middle of a basketball game. So it was just, it was a different mentality, and I had to adapt. I had to realize that I was not coaching guys, I was coaching girls, and I had to adapt to, just the way they are, and they're a little bit different than guys. So it was a good experience for me because I learned probably as much as they did.
Right. Did you ever see A League on Their Own with Tom Hanks?
Yes, I did. Yes.
So you know what the woman player starts crying, and then Tom Hanks like, "There's no crying. There's no crying in baseball." It's that moment for you.
That's a great line.
Oh man, so 2012, a big challenge come in your life, cancer. Take us through the mindset and the emotion of you finding out that you had cancer.
Yeah, so I'm a girls' high school basketball coach, and I have a callus break open on the bottom of my foot, right below my third toe. And initially, I don't think much of it, but after a couple of weeks of it not healing, I made an appointment to see a podiatrist, a foot doctor friend of mine, and he took an X-ray and he said, "Terry, I think you have a little cyst in there, and I can cut it out." And he did, and he showed it to me. It's just a little gelatin sac with some white fat in it. No dark spots, no blood, nothing that gave either one of us concern. But fortunately or unfortunately, he sent it off to pathology, sent it off to have it analyzed. And 2 weeks later, I received a call from him. And as I mentioned, he was a friend. And the more difficulty he was having explaining what was going on, the more frightened I was becoming. Until finally, he just laid it out for me. He said, "Terry, I've been a doctor for 25 years. I have never seen this form of cancer that you have. You have a rare form of melanoma that appears on the bottom of the feet or the palms of the hands. And because your cancer is so incredibly rare, I recommend that you go to the MD Anderson Cancer Center in Houston and be treated." And I mean, Jeff, I'll be honest with you. I went through all the emotions that I think a person does, when you consider grief, when you lose something. I mean, I was like, first I was in denial. I'm like, well, no, I've done everything in my right in my life. I have a physical every year. I eat right. I don't abuse out. I went through all that, and then you get mad, and then you sort of bargain with God, and then and then I just got to a point where it was like, this sucks, but I'm going to have to embrace the suck. These are the cards that
Right.
I've been dealt. I'm going to have to play these cards to the best of my ability. And so that started down, this odyssey, which has lasted 10 years now. And, they certainly didn't give me more than 5 years when I was initially diagnosed.
Wow. So tell us about the treatment and what you had to endure of dealing with this whole cancer thing.
Yeah. So initially, I had a surgery to remove all the tumor on the bottom of my foot and all the lymph nodes in my groin. And then I had a skin graft to close the wound on the bottom of my foot where the cancer had been cut out. And when I healed, my oncologist, my doctor, put me on a weekly injection of a drug called interferon to help keep the disease from coming back. Interferon for me was just a horrible, nasty, debilitating drug that gave me severe flu-like symptoms for 2 to 3 days every week after each injection. And I took
Mm.
those weekly injections for 5 years. So imagine having the flu every week for 5 years. And
Oh
that
man.
wasn't a cure. That was just, as my oncologist used to say, we're trying to kick the can down the road and buy you more time to have more therapies available for you. 2017, I ended up in the intensive care unit because of the toxicity to the interferon. I ended up in the intensive care unit with a fever of 108 degrees, which usually is not compatible with being alive. I was
Wow.
fortunate that I was at a level 1 trauma center, an emergency room that was able to stabilize me and send me to the ICU. So because of the toxicity, I had to stop the interferon in 2017. And almost immediately, the cancer came back in the exact same spot on my foot where it had presented 5 years earlier. And that necessitated the amputation of my left foot in 2018. The cancer worked its way up my leg into my shin in 2019, requiring 2 additional surgeries. And then in 2020, I had an undiagnosed tumor kind of in my ankle area, or what was left of my ankle area, that grew large enough that it fractured my tibia, my shin bone. And my only
Mm.
recourse right in the middle of the pandemic was to have my left leg amputated above the knee. And I also found out I have tumors in my lungs, and I'm currently being treated for those now. And because of the COVID situation, I mean, my wife literally dropped me off at the hospital to have my leg amputated. I could have nobody with me. My surgeon had to get special permission just to do the surgery, and I was the only operation that day. So that's kind of where I am now. I go every third week now, and I'm on a clinical trial drug for the tumors in my lungs. They are stable, but they're still there, but they haven't gone anywhere else in my body.
Right, right. Wow, man. Staying strong, and you got to be strong, not just for yourself, but also for your family as well, man. Kudos to you, actually being a soldier and actually fighting back this cancer. And I just pray to God that this you be able to beat this cancer and to move forward to the next chapter or your chapters of your life coming forward.
Thank you.
Uh, so you winded up losing a lot of weight. Yeah. How much pounds did you lose during the whole therapy?
I lost about 50 pounds. I used to say that there was one point where I felt I was so skinny that I could go hang gliding on a Dorito. You know, not a great joke, but nonetheless, that's kind of how I felt. I mean, it was,
Yeah.
that 5 years of interferon was just horrible. I mean, I take the injections on a Saturday night, and Sunday, Monday, and Tuesday, it was just like having a bad case of the flu. You felt nauseous, you were chilled, had a headache. We've all had the flu, but it was just, you knew it was going to be the next week and the next week and the next week, and it was. There were days, I'll be honest with you, there were times where I was so sick of being sick that I just prayed to die. I was like, just please, just take me out of this. I am, but I have a fairly strong faith, and God didn't. But what I think God did was give me the strength to continue to go on. And you
Yes.
realize that you try to win the day, but sometimes winning the day is I just got to win this 5 minutes. I just got to get from the bed to the couch, and that
All right.
was winning the day. And I know that sounds real simple, but I mean, for me, that's kind of what it was.
Right. Right. One day at a time. I want to give you drop a saucy bomb for you. So, my next question for you is, I want to ask you about your fourth truths to help others lead to their uncommon and extraordinary life. Let's just start with the first one. Controlling your mind so it doesn't control you.
Yeah, I think that's real important. And I learned that early. I learned that back when I was in high school and I had those 3 knee surgeries. And when I went back playing after having those 3 knee surgeries, I remember my brain was putting all kinds of negative thoughts into my mind. Things like, hey, you're probably a step slower after these surgeries, and college coaches aren't going to be interested in recruiting you. And I remember thinking, well, wait a minute, I'm still playing at an elite level, and college coaches are still reaching out about the possibility of playing for their college or the university. So I learned early on that you need to change the narrative. You need to flip the switch into something more positive. And it's estimated that we all have 60 to 70,000 thoughts that pass through our brain every single day. And
Mm.
many of them we don't even pay attention to. But your mind can hold one thought at a time. Why would you want to make that a negative thought? I remember, I talked earlier about Isaiah Thomas, who went to the University of Indiana to play college basketball, and I remember he used to tell me, well, I would see him in the summer when he would come home, and I was like, well, how is it playing for Knight? And he said, Knight's got this great philosophy. He said, and this is what he said. He says, mental is to physical as 4 is to 1. And so here's this great coach teaching these premier athletes how to use their bodies to be great basketball players. But what he was really saying is that your mind is 4 times more important than your physical body is. So it's really
Right.
important, I think, for all of us to control the thoughts that are in our mind, because we all become what we think.
Right. Isaiah Thomas is. I met him a couple times. I actually work for the league.
That's right, you do. You work for the NBA, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I'm in security field. So I met Isaiah Thomas. Actually, my first year I started working for the NBA back in 2015. We have like a Christmas party every year. So usually we have like NBA legends come, and we usually hold it at the convention center, the Javits Convention Center, or and I think the last time we did it before COVID, we had it at the Manhattan Center,
Okay.
right near off 34th Street, not 34th Street, but around that area, Manhattan Center, and no, Isaiah Thomas is he's very down to earth. He's easy to approach and everything, and he's a very smart, very smart guy.
Yeah.
Just holding a conversation with him, and just 5 minutes, I really learned a lot from him, and he's just great. He's just a great
Yeah.
guy. Yeah, and
He was
also
in high school, and
yeah,
I don't think the apple falls far from the tree, and
right,
he learned a ton from Bobby Knight, and I mean, Bobby Knight
yeah,
used to get a bad rap about, his temper and stuff like that. But Isaiah
yeah,
used to always say that, he cares about his players.
right. And the Pistons team that Isaiah played for, like the Bad Boys, it was more of a they were physical, but it was more of a psychological
Yeah,
thing, and I think he got that from Bobby Knight.
I think you're right.
How Bobby Knight was so tough,
Yeah.
rough around the edges, but you hear a lot of stories about Bobby Knight behind the scenes that he's a very loving and caring guy.
Yeah, I mean, Isaiah used to tell us that, he used to require that they bring a book on their road trips. I mean, not necessarily their course books, they're for their school or for their classes, but a book that you would read, like you and I would read for enjoyment. So,
Right,
he was very big on reading and learning, and just constant learning, getting better, understanding more things, not necessarily about basketball, but just about life in general.
right, absolutely. Shout out to Isaiah Thomas. Your second truth is embracing the pain and difficulty and using it to make you a stronger and more determined individual.
Yeah, I mean, we're all going to experience pain in our lives, and it doesn't have to be, cancer pain or a chronic illness or even any kind of a disease whatsoever. I mean, it could be as simple as, you break up with your boyfriend or your girlfriend, or you have a fender bender on the way to work, or somebody at your office gets a promotion that you think you deserve. Pain is inevitable in our lives. Suffering, on the other hand, suffering's optional. Suffering's what you do with that pain. Do you take it and use it to make you a stronger and more resilient individual? Or do you wallow in it and feel sorry for yourself and want other people to feel sorry for you? I mean, life is a choice. Life is about the choices that we make, and life owes us nothing. There's no guarantee for any of us in life. So, I used to always tell my players that they needed to be comfortable with being uncomfortable in life. So, if you've got pain in your life, instead of running from it, instead of understanding that your brain is hardwired to avoid that pain and discomfort and to seek pleasure, instead of running from pain, do just the opposite. Take that pain, flip it inside you, burn it as fuel, use it as energy to make you a stronger and more resolute individual. And I'll give your audience something I try to do every single day of my life, and that's do one thing that makes you nervous, that makes you uncomfortable, that scares you, that's potentially embarrassing. It doesn't have to be a big thing, something small every day. If you do that every day, when the big things in life hit you, and they hit us all, we lose somebody who's close to us, we lose our job, we're living out of a car, whatever it is, we've all heard the stories. If you do those small things every day that make you uncomfortable, when the big things in life hit, you'll be so much more resilient to handle those.
Wow, that's very dope. That's very amazing the way you put that together. Your next truth is understanding that what you leave behind is what you weave in your hearts, and I mean of other people.
Yeah, that's more of I guess a legacy truth, for lack of a better word. I think it's important, regardless of where we are in our life, just starting out, middle age, towards the end. I think it's important for all of us to sort of think about the end game. What do you want people to say about you at your funeral? I mean, what are people going to say about you at your funeral? I mean, I have friends that actually read the obituary page in the newspaper or online every day, one, to keep themselves humble, and two, to remind themselves that someday somebody's going to be reading their obituary as well. And when I found out that I had that when I after I had my leg amputated and I found out I had tumors in my lungs, I went with my wife to the mortuary and to the cemetery and to the church, and I planned my funeral. And because when I speak, I speak on the topic of motivation and the need to keep moving forward in our lives. I actually got some brushback from people for planning my own funeral. That they implied in some way that it was defeatist. And I remember
Wow.
kind of saying to them, "Well, last time I checked, we're all going to die. I don't think anybody's working on a cure for life, as far as I know. Uh, all of us are going to die, but not all of us are really going to live." And I heard a Native American Blackfoot proverb years ago that I love, and it goes like this: when you were born, you cried, and the world rejoiced. Live your life in such a way so that when you die, the world cries and you rejoice. That's what I want. That's what I'm looking for. Don't
Wow.
get me wrong. I'm not looking to hasten my demise in any way, shape, or form, but I'm not so upset or scared or nervous about dying because I feel that I found my purpose in life and I live that purpose. So death doesn't really have any kind of a fear, or I'm not scared when it comes. I'm not looking for it to happen, but when it comes, it's not going to bother me.
Right, right. Absolutely. I tell our friends all the time that everybody has a purpose in life, and it's all about you finding what that is and using that to your advantage, because that's a special gift that God gave you, and He gave you that talent for a reason, and that's to use it. So that's why I tell a lot of my friends who be like seeking to find a way through life, and I'm like, well, you was put on here for a reason. It's a reason why you was the only one to find that egg.
Yeah, you're right. You're absolutely right. I mean, and if you think about it, there's so many people in life that kind of live a casual life, and
Right.
because of that casual living, their goals, their dreams, their ambitions become a casualty of that unplanned living. And that's a shame. And I'm going to make a huge generalization here, but I've seen a lot of people die, both in my time in law enforcement and certainly my time with cancer. And the things that I think I've come to understand is that people who die what you and I would probably call peaceful deaths are people who seem to have found their purpose in life and lived it. Whereas the people
Absolutely.
who go kicking and screaming, who want another day, who want another year, who want another month, whatever it is, those are the people that never seemed to do anything with their life. And Mark Twain, the famous American author and humorist, had a great quote. He said, the two most important days of our lives are the day we're born and the day we figure out why.
Wow. Yep, that's absolutely right. That's a great way to put it. Your last truth is remembering that as long as you don't quit, you can never be defeated.
Yeah, I think that's pretty self-explanatory, but the way that resonates with me is this. Someday my pain is going to end. It may end through surgery. It may end through some kind of new medication. Quite frankly, it may end when I die. But if I
Mm.
quit, if I give up, if I give in to pain, then pain will always be a part of my life. And I guess when you get to that point where you're kind of at the end of your rope, and we all get there. I have a friend, actually a young man who my wife works with, who's a former Navy SEAL. And when
Mm.
I have my off weeks of treatment, he'll call me just to check up on me, see how I'm doing and things like that. And we'll talk about everything and nothing. And sometimes what we talk about is what the SEALs call their 40% rule, which basically says that if you're at the end of your rope, if you're done, if you don't think you can go on, you're only at 40% of your maximum, and you still have another 60% left to give to yourself. So if you ever get to that point in life where, I'm just through, I'm throwing my hands up, I quit, I go, remember that you're only at 40% of your maximum. You have more than half still in reserve to give to yourself whenever you get it to that point in your life.
Mm. Drop a saucy bomb. Um, so you wind up. Let's talk about your book. That you actually wrote. Sustainable excellence. 10 principles to leading your uncommon and extraordinary life. I have. Oh yeah. So tell us about the process of writing this book. How long did it take you to write this book?
To write it about 3 months.
Mm.
So it was really a book born out of two conversations I had. One was with a former player that I had coached in high school, and she and her fiance moved to Denver. And my wife and I had dinner with them one night. And I remember saying to her, I'm really excited that you're living close and I can watch you find and live your purpose. She got real quiet for a while. And then she kind of looked at me and she's like, well, coach, what do you think my purpose is? I said, I have no idea what your purpose is, but that's what your life should be about. Finding the reason you were put on the face of this earth, using your unique gifts and talents, and living that reason. So that was one conversation. And then I had a young man in college who reached out to me on social media, and he asked me what I think were the most important things he should learn to not just be successful in his job or in business, but to be successful in life. And I didn't want to give him the, get up early, work hard, help others. Not that those aren't important. They are very important. But I wanted to see if I could go deeper with him. So I thought about it for a while and I started to make some notes. And eventually I had these 10 ideas, these 10 thoughts, these 10 principles. And so I sent them to him. And then I kind of stepped back and I was like, I've got a life story that fits underneath this principle, or I know somebody whose life emulates that principle. So literally during the period of time between having my leg amputated and starting chemotherapy for the tumors in my lungs, while I was healing, I sat down at the computer every day and I built stories underneath the principles. And they're real stories. I mean, they're not, they're not made up. They're real people and real events that occurred that I think illustrate the different principles. And so then I've got this book and I was like, well, now what? I'd never written a book before. I didn't understand the publishing process. And that was something I had to learn. But I was like, okay, I got to sell books. I got to sell books. I got to sell books. And I remember I had a best-selling author over in the United Kingdom who reached out to me. We were connected on social media and he said, Terry, you're missing the point. Your job is not to sell books. Your job is to help people. If you help people, the books will sell themselves. And I was so glad that he said that to me because I had no idea what I was doing. It was like,
Right.
I've got a book, so I must need to sell it now. And he's like, no, do what you do and let the book selling take care of itself. So that's how sustainable excellence came to be.
Wow. So how surreal was actually when you finished writing the book and you released it? How surreal was it? Like, man, I wrote a book and it only took me 3 months to do it.
Well, I did a lot of pre-research and stuff like that. So yes, it did take me 3 months of actually sitting down at the computer every day. And people asked me, what was your process for writing? And I said, well, really, I'm not that bright. So I kept it simple. I had two rules. Number one, every day except Sunday, I would write at least one page. And number two, I would not edit anything until I had the first draft done. And so there were days I sat down at the computer and was writing, and I'm like, this is garbage. This is terrible. This is never going to see the inside of a book. But then the next day I'd write something that was better. And so there was that constant process, and was the discipline of sitting down at the computer every day and adhering to that rule. I've got to write at least one page. Now there were days where I wrote 15, 20 pages. But then there were days where I wrote one page because I just wasn't inspired. I was feeling bad or whatever it was. So as long as you stay with the process, eventually you get there. So you're right. Now I've got this manuscript. I've got this book, and I'll never forget the publisher sent me a hard copy and a paperback, and it showed up. It was a Saturday. I'll never forget this. And, I was so nervous about opening the box to see this brand new book that I had written that it was amazing. It was pretty exciting.
Wow. Yeah, I'm actually in the process of writing my book. So I really in the future want to pick your brain
Sure.
and show me some the steps in the process how to make write a book. This question for you: what's next for Terry Tucker? What is next? What's the next chapter for you? Where you see
That's
yourself in the next 5 to 10 years?
oh, I'll be lucky to live this year. So I don't. I'm putting together. I was actually convinced to put together a membership program for the people who have, and not just for the people who have read the book, but enough people who read the book said, we want more. We want to go deeper and things like that. So I'm working right now with a company out of Texas to develop a membership program. I've thought about writing a second book. Sustainable Excellence is a book about success, I guess, for lack of a better word, how we can be successful. And I'm thinking about writing another book that also is about a word that begins with S, and that word is significance. Success is what we do for ourselves. Significance is what we do for other people. Now, don't get me wrong. I think you can be both. I think you can be successful and significant in life. But I think significance or service, whatever you want to call it, is more important than really our own success. But I think you can be both. So I don't want people to think, well, if do I have to be significant and I won't be successful? No, you can do both. It's going to take a lot of work, but I really think that regardless of what we do for a living, whatever our passion is, our purpose is, that we were all put here to serve, whether we believe in God, to serve our God, but to serve our fellow man, to serve each other in that. And that was one of the driving forces that got me into law enforcement.
Absolutely. Terry, can you tell the audience where they can find your book?
Yeah, the book is pretty much available anywhere you can get a book online. It's available at Amazon, BarnesandNoble.com, Apple iBooks. Pretty much, if you just search sustainable excellence, it'll pop up somewhere online wherever you can get a book.
All right, cool. So I'm gonna put that subscription and I'll put that link in the description to your book. I also have your LinkedIn and your Twitter links in the description below. So if you'd like to be in contact with Terry, please go support the book. Terry's been a pleasure having you on the show. God bless you and your family. This is just the beginning of you know a friendship and also a Conrad. If you need anything on my end, don't be afraid to reach out to me.
Thank you for having me on. I always say it's nice people like you that allow me to come on and tell my story, and hopefully between our conversation, we're going to make a difference in somebody's life. And if we do, today's been a good day.
Yes, you have an amazing story, man. And you are a survivor, and you're a true soldier. And I pray to God to continue to keep you and wrap you in His grace going forward.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome. That's the end of Saucy Conversations, season 4, episode 15. We want to thank everybody who watched on YouTube, our Twitch channel, and Facebook channel. If you didn't watch the live stream and you rewatching it, we appreciate you for watching it as well. Don't forget to hit the like button. Don't forget to subscribe to all the platforms beyond. The description is below. Don't forget to support what some official merch we have on Teespring. So if you'd like to get a Saucy Conversation shirt, hat, hoodie, socks, please go to Teespring and support. And also shout out to our sponsors, Click A Vodka, and shout out to Holistic Remedies. Make sure you go support them as well. Shout out to my co-hosts going to be here today. Shout out to Dad, Vanessa, and Mac. Shout out to the whole Saucy family. And we will see you on episode 16. Peace and love. Thank you so much, Terry. God bless you, bro.
Thank you.